how to apply, Q&A, and open informational session for the ARS program, which is Acquire, Renovate, Sell. We are going to be opening up the application later this month by October 31st in CAMS. And we kind of wanted to go through what the process looks like and answer any questions you all have about it. So we appreciate your time. And Jeff, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so the Virginia ARS program. The program was actually created by DHCD, and we created it kind of as a piggyback to the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, which was a federal program. Virginia Housing is our partner in the program, formerly known as VHDA, and they actually fund the program. They're our funders for us. To date, we have received $7.5 million in the program, and with the ability to request additional monies once those are spent down. And of course, we are the administrators for the program. So if you apply for the grant, you will be working directly with DHCD. Okay, next slide. So what sets ARS apart from other programs? First and foremost, it is not a quote unquote budgeted program. The monies are put into a performance pool. So those with, high performers can draw additional monies. And those that might only want to do 1 or 2 properties throughout their contract can only do 1 or 2 properties. We don't limit the number of properties you can do. It is based on capacity. So if you have the capacity to tell us, gee, we've got the opportunity to work on 5 foreclosures at one time with a group of contractors, we're going to allow you to do that. And you can draw those monies as needed. So the second, and to me, the best part of this program is that our funds are not federal and they are not state. So we don't have a lot of the federal overlays that y'all are familiar with if you work with the IPR program or the CDBG program or our lead program. These are truly Virginia housing funds, so that we have a guideline book that we work through with Virginia Housing, and we don't have the, like I said, the federal overlays that some of the other programs have. There is a caveat to that that we'll talk about down the road, but if you were to leverage or braid, as some people say, a federal program with ARS, which is allowed, then of course those federal overlays would come into focus there. And you would have to comply with those. So ARS funding is only for the renovation piece. It is not for acquisition. You would need a line of credit, or if you're locality general funds for the acquisition piece. But for the renovation, we'll talk about the amounts of money and how they're spent. And ARS is for home ownership only. Currently, we do not have any rentals under the program with ARS. So these are homes that you would be acquiring, renovating, and then reselling to either first-time homeowners or LMI homeowners. And we'll talk about what that looks like. So one of the conditions with the Virginia housing money is that we make every attempt to sell to first-time home buyers. And so far, all of our homes, we have not had one yet that has sold outside of that realm. But we also understand that in some of the rural areas, marketing can take a while. We certainly don't want to turn an eligible homeowner away from the program, so that we ask that it be marketed to first-time home buyers during the first 60 days of your listings. And then once that time has expired, if you have someone who is, a retiree, someone who's downsizing, something like that, we will absolutely look at them. We do not allow investors. They must be the primary residence of the occupant. And let me just stop right there and see, because like I said, this is a very informal. So based on what everyone's heard so far, are there any questions? And you can put them in chat, or you can unmute yourself and just ask. It doesn't matter. Okay, so far so good. ARS eligible properties. You can go to the next screen. What do they look like? So with our properties, we want to see that you all are acquiring what we've kind of defined as an undervalued home. And an undervalued home is something that we consider under market. So, it could be abandoned, it could be a tax sale, it could be a foreclosure, it could be a home where there is, absolute deferred maintenance for years and years. We've even had some where, and I kind of laugh when I see them, an investor got really happy watching way too many hours of HGTV during COVID, ran out, bought what they could think was a flip, got in way over their head and gave up. So we've been able to acquire a few of those as well. So these are homes that are not at current market value. They might be 5,000 under market value because it just needs a little, lipstick on it. It may be something that's very serious, that's a structural issue or a mechanical issue, and it might be $10,000 to $15,000 under current market. And then you get on into the foreclosures or your tax sales, and a lot of those, the home might have been abandoned or vacant for 10 years or more. We have some of those in the tax sales now, and with those properties, you might be getting them at half off by the time you get in there and look at them and see what's got to be done. So all of those are ways that you can acquire homes. There are others. Some of you, if you belong to a locality or you partner with a locality, you may already own properties on your record books that either were tax sales that nobody bid on, that you took back. We have a few of our rural property in our localities where, let's say, grandmom had passed away and the kids moved out of town 20 years ago. Nobody wants to come back, and the home is just sitting there vacant, and it's accruing taxes. Sometimes if zoning gets involved, it's accruing fines for grass or broken windows or something like that. And those families much rather just sign the house back over to the town than have to pay all that back costs. So there's lots of ways to acquire these properties. And Jeff and I have found, even talking to some of our newer grantees, that once we start delving into it, 4 out of 10 of them may already own properties. So it's a good way to get started. So what kind of properties are eligible and what are excluded under ARS? And I picked this background on purpose because what I am in front of is not eligible. You cannot fund or renovate a little RV pop-up camper to live in, unfortunately. So under eligible, we have family, of course, single family stick built all day long. We will do those. You can also do manufactured homes under ARS, and you can do modular homes under ARS. We have even gone so far, with the modular units, as we have entertained the idea of container homes, because Virginia Housing does have a financing program for them. And more recently, Jeff and I have a project that is printing 3D concrete homes. So that's a project that we're looking at. And so we will look at a variety of things. If you have a unique or an alternative building idea, bring it to us. We will be more than happy to talk to you about that. But of course, not only do we do single family, but we do townhomes, we do row homes, we do condos, and the newest thing that we've been allowed to do, which was just great with Virginia Housing, is we are allowed to now build new construction on any lot or land that once had a livable structure. So let's say you have an infill lot, in your town, and a house burned down 50 years ago. That is eligible under under ARS. As long as we can show somewhere, some way, an old tax record, something, an old picture of a house on the lot, something to show that the house once stood there, then we can go back and do new construction. And again, that could be a modular, that could be a manufactured, that could be a stick built, that could be an alternative build. And, as long as, of course, the town and the zoning in the town approve that type of building. With the condos, we do multifamily, but only up to a fourplex currently. So if it is a duplex, we would look at renovating it. When we renovate a multifamily, of course, each unit has to be individually sold to an owner occupant, but each unit is eligible to draw the ARS funds for renovation. So if you're doing a duplex, that's 2 separate properties under ARS. What do we exclude? So we exclude the beautiful little things behind me. We exclude mobile homes currently and multifamily greater than 4 units. So unfortunately, we don't have the capability under this program to come in and say, hey, we're going to renovate 30 apartments in a loft, as a downtown commercial project. That's not what this program is. So this is mainly single family residential or multifamily under 4. Involuntary sales. So that is that came about back in 2008 when there were multiple foreclosures. There were the robo-signers, and for those of y'all that were dealing with all of that back then, where the larger banks had people all over the country signing these things at 2:00 in the morning, and nobody had been served the right papers and everything else. Those are very far and few between, but occasionally, especially if an investor has held their own mortgage, the foreclosure or the take back is not a legal procedure, and that is an involuntary sale. So we do not, if we start getting into the title work and start checking things out, we may void that as an ARS possibility simply because we don't allow that involuntary sale. And occupied homes. And what we mean by that is ARS does not have any funds to provide for temporary or permanent relocation. And so if you are looking at a home that the owner is selling and it's had years of deferred maintenance, that's not what we're calling an occupied home. That is a voluntary sale where that owner has said, I'm done. I need to sell the house. And again, that's allowed all day long. What we're talking about is an investor who may or may not have gotten into trouble, wants to unload the property. You go out to inspect the property, and there's a tenant that's been there for 3 years. We dissuade you from doing that. If it is a great house, if it is something that you want to pursue, just understand that we have to follow the Uniform Relocation Act, and that you would be required to relocate that tenant and pay up to 48 months of rent for their new location. So unless you have a very large pocketbook, that could get very, very expensive. So we always try and tell you, search for the homes that are vacant. It's cleaner. It leaves a lot of money in your pocket. And if you have one that is a unique situation or something where you could move the family into another unit that you've renovated that's for rent, we'll talk to you. Absolutely. But that can be a very, very difficult situation. Are there any questions on what is eligible and what is excluded to date?
No, that's good.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure. Okay. So, program income. We have program income, and there's actually 2 parts to it. And I wanted to go through what that kind of looks like with the ARS program. So in general, before we start looking at them, in general, program income, of course, you all have made that on other programs on IPR. If you were an NSP recipient, you also had to return program income. I know CDBG on some programs have a repayment plan for some of their loans. So with ARS, what we have is, and Jeff, if you want to go ahead and start clicking these. So we have the ARS repayment. And when you use the ARS funds, because this is more of a business deal than it is a grant program, we allow up to $40,500 for ARS funds to be used for the renovation piece on the home. And those funds, let's say you draw all $40,500, when you go to sell the house, that $40,500 is expected to be returned to DHCD so that we can recycle it and put it back out. So after the sale of the home, we treat that as what we call part one of program income, or program income, 1. And you would return those funds to us. You also receive funding for the rehab specialist and deliverables. Those are funds that are paid directly to you. Those are not returnable. That's money you've earned for that project. So the funds, we try and ask that after you close, that you have 30 days to return the ARS Part 1 program income to us, the construction funds. Now, there's a Part 2 to ARS, and that is the net proceeds from the sale when you sell the home to that home buyer. The great thing about the ARS program is we do not expect those funds back. Those are yours to use in your community to continue affordable housing efforts. So that, let's say, and we've given kind of an example that Part 2 is derived from the sale of each ARS property. These program income funds will be generated, and the net proceeds, again, are continued for affordable housing efforts. Now, that does not mean it has to go back into the ARS program. We allow you, and we are very flexible in this, and I'm going to give you some examples of current ARS grantees and how they use those funds. So we have one grantee in Northern Virginia who one of their programs is to subsidize LMI senior citizens rentals, because we know they're on fixed incomes. And we also know, and anybody who knows anything about Northern Virginia, the rental has just skyrocketed over the past couple of years. So they are in a position to take their proceeds, put it into an account, and help cover that gap between what the current rents are and what the individual is bringing home or making in retirement. So that's one option. And again, rent is an affordable housing issue. So that's one issue we cover. We have another group that said, okay, we wanted to create our own rural rehab program for our town. So they wanted to do, roofs and water heaters or something like that. Absolutely, that's a program that we would approve, and you could put your net proceeds there. Of course, if you told Jeff and I that we're going to take them and run to the Bahamas on a cruise, we're probably not going to approve that. But on the other hand, we allow a wide variety of ideas, and as Jeff and I always say, just bring them to us. Come and talk to us about what you think you'd like to do and what you think might work in your community. And I apologize if y'all can hear that. My dog came into the kitchen to get a drink on the recording. So what is the ARS process? So ARS Funds Allocation. So the acquisition. Under your acquisition, as we've said, ARS does not provide funding for the acquisition. So you would need to either have a line of credit. If you're a locality, if you had general funds, you could apply towards this. And it does not have to be a single line of credit. If you have, 2 or 3 small lines of credit with different banks or credit unions or VCC, then absolutely we would look at all of those to do that. And, we've been asked, is there a minimum? Is there a minimum that you all would need in order to apply for this? And, as Jeff and I work this program, and it is a program that is all around the Commonwealth. So there's not an area that we say, oh, we can't work there. We understand that all of you have your individual real estate climates. You know, there are little microclimates all over Virginia. And if I were to tell, you know, South Boston, hey, you've got to have an $800,000 line of credit in order to be ready to buy a house, you know, Earl would look at me and laugh and say, you know, my houses are $60,000 a piece. You know, if the requirement is I have to be able to buy two, well, I only need $120,000 line of credit. So, you know, and if I applied that in Fairfax, they would say, well, that buys me 1/4 of a house. So, you know, it is a very flexible program. What we would say is this: you all know your markets, and if not, we can help you determine kind of a median sales price as you come to apply to this. Look, and what we'd like to see is that you have that ability to buy at least 1 to 2 houses on your line of credit at any given time. So that if there is an opportunity, you know, if a bank says, hey, we've got 2 coming up in, you know, Nottoway County, and we'd like to sell them as a pair, you have that ability and you don't miss that option. And beyond that, you know, we're not trying to set a flat limit or a you know, a minimum. We're going to look at each individual area as we go through this. So is there any question on how we work on the acquisition piece? Okay.
So are you saying, as far as the line of credit, you're saying like have, like a bank would be willing to give you a loan for a property? Is that what you mean?
Right. So you can, yeah, you can either get a loan property by property, or some of our grantees are just going to the bank and getting a line of credit, like an unsecured line of credit, so that they can, so that if they're at an auction and they've got, you know, only 10 days to settle, they can buy that property then and there and not have to worry about going for a mortgage, and it might take 30 days.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. And renovation. And see, that's where our funding really comes into focus. So for renovation, again, we have on our construction side, you can draw up to $40,500. You can layer as many programs as you want that make this project work. And of course, still give you a net profit at the end, because the whole point of this is to treat this more like a business rather than a grant program. So if you have, you know, if you have something that, let's say it has lead layering on top of that, or if you have stop funding, if you have Federal Bank of Atlanta funding or grants, then you have those programs as well. So we have, we've had a couple of habitats where we go to closing and there's 4 or 5 leveraged programs to make that deal work. We don't have a limit. We don't have a requirement on that. Just talk to us about what you're looking for and how you're trying to make this work. So we've got that going on. Then as far as your, you know, we do require a rehab specialist. Is everybody familiar what a rehab specialist is in our programs? Because if not, I can go into that. Okay. So think of a construction manager. The person that's heading out to the site on a weekly basis, checking in with your subs or your GC, making sure that your timeline is being monitored, completing any reports. And again, you know, Jeff and I are very non-government employees. So, you know, we don't have paperwork this thick on red tape, but we do have some forms that need to be filled out just to make sure that, you know, if your subs are supposed to be there Monday through Friday, that he doesn't go in on a Friday morning and there's nobody working. So we want to make sure that, you know, subs are doing what they're supposed to, that you're meeting your time requirements, and you're staying in budget. So, you know, in all honesty, it truly is a construction manager that's kind of overseeing everything. But in government ease, it's called a rehab specialist. And we, out of this program, we will pay $2,500 towards the rehab specialist in order to track that individual home. And that's paid per unit. So again, if you're doing a single family, that's 2,500. If you're doing a duplex and he's watching both sides or she's watching both sides, that's 5,000. Okay, on the resale. So under the resale, again, we want you to sell this home at fair market value. We want you to make a profit on it. And so what we said was, you would, after closing, you're going to return any monies that you used for construction out of the sale of the home. We don't ask for any payment. There's no interest while the home is being renovated. And unlike NSP, we're not standing over you going federal program, sell, because we immediately had to return that money to HUD. We understand that COVID has caused all kinds of wrinkles in the construction market, not only with cost, but with supplies, with materials, and supply chain. So if you were to tell us, hey, we're concerned about the flu season coming up, we're still concerned about COVID, we're spacing our contractors out so that we don't have 11 people in the house at one time, we understand that. So if normally you could complete the home and get it ready for market in a 3 to 4 month time period, and now it's more like a 7 to 9 month time period, that's okay. Just keep us in the loop, let us know what's happening, but you don't have any kind of payment or interest accruing on that renovation money the entire time it's being renovated or listed for sale. We only expect the payment when the home sells. So, and again, you can bring in as many leverage sources as you need, whether it's leverage money on acquisition, maybe you have a grant to help acquire, whether you need leverage money for the renovation piece, or we also have monies and programs to help with the down payment and closing costs. Let's say that your buyer uses Virginia Housing as their mortgage lender. Well, Virginia Housing has some set aside money for ARS for down payment assistance or closing costs. It's up to 2.5% of the mortgage. So that can be very beneficial. And those are grant funds, so your borrower does not owe them back. And they also, what is beneficial for ARS is we have Spark funding that is only for ARS grantees and their home buyers. And for those that aren't familiar with Spark, that is sponsoring partnerships and revitalizing communities. And that program works to buy down the home buyer's interest rate. And like we all know, they're going up right now, a full 1%. And that's for the life of the loan. That's not a temporary buy down. That's not a step buy down. And it buys it down 1%. And it's zero cost to the home buyer to do this. They just apply through ARS, fill out some forms with the Virginia Housing Lender, and they can use those funds. But for example, if the interest rate is 6%, well, that buys the rate down to 5%. If it's at 5.5%, it buys it down to 4.5%. That's an incredible savings over the life of the loan, especially if these rates are increasing. So, administration, what do we do there? We know that you guys are going to make a net profit on the back, and again, those are your funds to keep. So what we do is we provide what we call deliverables or performance bonuses, kind of as you work through the property, and you're eligible to draw up to $2,000 for the deliverables. You receive $500 when you acquire the home. You receive $1,000 when the renovation is complete, and you receive $500 when the home sells. And that is yours to keep. That is direct payment to you, and is to be used however you see fit. So again, you all are eligible to keep your net proceeds from the sale of the home. And out of that net proceeds, you can draw for your own staff an additional 10% out of that net proceeds to use for additional admin. So if you've got overhead, supplies, Maybe your rehab specialist wanted $3,000 a house, not 2,500. You've got up to 10% to pull out of those net proceeds to do that. So we're going to run through just some quick examples here on what that looks like. And so let's say, and of course, these timesheets were, these examples were written prior to the housing jump that we've all recently experienced. I'm not sure we could find a house for $90,000 now, but let's say that you all were able to acquire a home for $90,000, and of course you used your line of credit to purchase it. Your rehab specialist / construction manager, well, they're going to go out to the house and they're going to do kind of a scope of work. What does it need? What is it looking for? How does, is it worth putting the 40,000 into it? Are you going to see that result on the backside with your net profit? And out of that 40,500, and of course we will make exceptions, but in general, you can draw, up to 4 times during that. You can draw for the acquisition deliverable as soon as you purchase that home. You send us the CV or the HUD-1. If it's a home you already own, send us proof of ownership, a tax bill, a tax assessment. You can draw that $500. Then the second draw is usually 1/2 of the renovation costs and the rehab specialist fee. The third draw is the half of the final renovation costs and the renovation deliverable because you've completed it. And then the fourth draw is usually when it sells, you get that $500 deliverable for resale. So are there any questions on drawing?
Sherry?
Yes.
On the acquisition deliverable.
Mm-hmm.
What if it is an already city-owned piece of property? Do we just lose that acquisition $500, or can we?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
We are really flexible. So, and I'll give you an example. We have a grantee in the Hampton Roads area, and they were beating their head against the wall saying there's no properties to buy. And when we go to buy the property, there's 15 investors in the front yard trying to buy the property. And as we talked to them, we quickly realized that they already owned properties that were long-term rentals, and they were trying to get out of the rental business. So they were able to, as leases expired, they already owned the property. We do not have a limit on when the property was acquired. So some of these they had owned, 10 years already, but they weren't going to convert it into an ARS property. So they could submit for the $500 acquisition. The home was vacant. They renovated the home under ARS, and then they sold that home. So we would apply the same thought process to a home that's already city owned. You would just show us proof. Once you're approved under ARS and under contract, you just simply upload proof that you own it, and you would receive that $500 acquisition deliverable.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Next slide. Let's see. Okay, so this is an example. So like we said, you can easily use leverage funds, and we highly recommend it. A lot of homes may need more than $40,500 in renovation, especially if they are a tax sale or the home has been sitting vacant for several years. So leverage money not only in the acquisition piece, leverage it in the renovation piece, and absolutely leverage it on the resale. And again, we always recommend that when you're working with your housing counselor directly, if they have a pipeline of home buyers that might be interested in one of these homes, that they go through and, a home buyer is free to choose any mortgage company they want, flat out. However, I always say, please provide them the information that Virginia Housing offers them, because it may be a better deal than their credit union, or it may be a better deal than the lender that they were going to go to, simply because they do get up to 2.5% grant funds for down payment or closing costs. They can apply and receive Spark funding, which is a huge deal now, especially since rates are going up. And it allows them to, to really save some money. And some of the Virginia housing programs have either no money down, or they do the Virginia Housing FHA loan, which is 3.5% down. So there's so many programs out there that they could look at for first-time home buyers that would really benefit the home buyer and give them a 30-year fix, not something that's going to change in 7 years, a 7/1 or a 10/1 ARM, which we want to try and avoid. So as we said, the provider, the grantee, is going to sell the home to a LMI home buyer. After closing, you're going to return those ARS renovation funds to us. And we talk about the TCR. That is a form that DHCD will walk through with you. It's a plug and play form. You fill out some basic information in it, and it will calculate how much has to be returned, how much the sales price could be, how much ARS funding is in it. So it will calculate everything for you. And we ask that you complete that form on every unit that you do under ARS. And again, it's a one-pager. It's not complicated. I think you have to fill out 6 lines on it, and it calculates everything else for you. So very easy to fill out. And once you're approved, that is a form we will walk you through. All right, next slide. And here's part of the form right here. So this is kind of what it looks like. Under Part A, you're going to fill in whether or not you did a broker's price opinion or you had an appraisal. And I will tell you, that is your call. This is your program that you're going to design for your real estate climate. There are properties, especially like Sean, you had said, oh, gee, we already own city-owned properties. There's no reason to run out and get an appraisal. You already own the property. So you might just have if you have a realtor on staff, or if you have a realtor maybe that sits on one of your boards, just to say, hey, can you give me an idea? We own it, but would you current value, would you value it at 50,000, 90,000, whatever that number is? And then, the acquisition cost. So you would put that in. And again, if it's a tax owned property, you might have taken that property back for $5,000 or $10,000. Well, that's what you would plug in there. When you go to do the renovation, if it's ARS funding, it goes in the very top line. Anything that is not a colored row or column, that's what you would need to type in. Everything in green and yellow automatically pre-fills. So you would go in and put in how much ARS funding you drew. If there was any leverage money involved, you would put that number in there. It's going to go through and tell you what your rehab costs were, what the total acquisition cost was, acquisition plus rehab, just so you know how much money you have in it. And then you would go in and put in the new value. If you took it back, it was a tax sale, you took it back for $10,000, you put 35 into it, you're all in at 45, but the market value on it is now 100. Then that's what you would put there. The Part F, the program income return, it automatically calculates the numbers there to tell you, okay, if you borrowed 35 from ARS renovation costs, that's what you're returning to us, is the 35. And then the last part is kind of, it just helps you determine numbers. It's an estimated net proceeds, just so you can kind of see. And again, it pretty much pre-calculates most of this for you, just so you can kind of keep track of what you may walk away with at the end of this. And some of our grantees are localities, and a lot of them have said, we don't want to do a house unless we make $10,000 per house. So as we look at this and you play with numbers, that's something, if that bottom line on Part G, that yellow says net proceeds grant date estimated, ever falls below 10, well, is that a house they want to work with under ARS? So, and again, we will go through that form. That was just a quick example of kind of what it looks like. We will absolutely walk through that form on several examples with you once you're under contract and help you through that. Okay, next slide. Okay, ARS forms. We're going to flip through these real quick. So the only one you would need to be concerned with right now is just a reservation form. It's quick and easy. You would just tell us who you are, what the property address is, the date you submitted it. All of you all on this call would be ARS-Direct. There were a few early on that also had NSP money, and so we had to identify those separately. And then you just tell us kind of where you are in the process. You've already acquired it, it's a pending offer, or your offer has been accepted but you haven't closed yet. And then you're going to tell us how much do you want to reserve. Are you trying to reserve the whole 45,000, the 40,500 plus the 4,500 in deliverables and rehab specialist fees, or did you do a workup and you only need $5,000 for ARS, or you only need $10,000 for ARS? And by the way, I have never seen a property like that, but good luck if you find one. So that's what that form looks like. And you're simply sending that to us. You can upload it into our CAM system. That's our application management, centralized application management system. That's a system we use. You would upload that into your account just so that Jeff and I can track, okay, in the month of September, we've reserved, another $1 million, and to kind of let us know what we're expecting to come through for your draw request down the road, since it is a performance pool. Next slide. So these are just checklists that as you go through the property, there's an acquisition checklist. This is so you can get paid. It tells you what you need on, to upload with your request, because at the end of the day, Jeff and I want to spend the money, and we want to make sure that you're submitting everything ahead of time. You would just submit that checklist with those documents with your draw request, and we can get it processed and paid really easily. And again, we're not asking for everything in the kitchen sink. It's a lot of it's just real simple stuff. To get the acquisition deliverable, like I said, all you need to show us is proof of ownership. So it's either your CD, your closing disclosure. If it's old property, you've got your HUD-1, or it's a tax assessment showing you as the owner. Renovation requirements, again, very simple. We want your scope of work and the contract signed with the contractor, and you can start drawing those funds. When it comes to resale, to get that $500, again, we're looking for the homebuyer or the CD disclosure, closing disclosure, where you're selling it to the homebuyer. So not a lot of paperwork. We try and keep it very simple and clean, but we will work with you. If it's new construction, it's a little more involved, but we can walk through that, case by case as you guys come across that. Okay, next slide. Questions? Any questions going into this? All right, go ahead and go to the next slide with our contact information. We'll leave that up there. So the second piece of this is, again, very quick. It's kind of the how to apply. So ARSs and CAMs, is there anybody on this call that is not familiar with our CAM system or is not registered in our CAM system?
That would be me, and I'm on the phone, so I don't see any of the slides.
Oh, okay, that's
so
fine.
Any contact information that you have, if I could, I don't know, give you the email address.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. If
just a second, I'll if you say it, or if you want, I can write it down. And
yes, I was going to say, yeah, if you just want to call it out, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. So it's my first name, Darlene. So DARLEOP1 at AOL.com.
Okay.
Okay, and what?
And would you say that one more time? Is it DARLEOP1?
Oh, yes.
Okay. At
AOL.com.
Oh yeah, at AOL. Perfect.
I think I'm one of the only ones left.
Don't worry. I'll send you this presentation as soon as we wrap up.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
what are you with, a nonprofit or a locality?
A locality, and it's Fredericksburg.
Oh, great.
Well, then you're
Yeah.
right around the corner from me, because that's where I'm giving this presentation from. I live in Spotsylvania.
Nice. Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so with the how to apply, again, we can't reiterate this enough. This is not a federal program. This is not a state program. Our application is 9 questions.
Okay.
All right, simple, easy to complete. The application will go live in CAMS on the 31st. And I say the 31st, it will probably be at the end of the day on the 31st. So you probably want to check it November 1st. It will be live.
Okay.
And with that, yeah, and Jeff and I can help you get signed up in CAMS. And we'll get you signed up and make sure that you're listed so that you'll be able to access the application when it opens up. But for those of you all who are already in CAMS, you would go to the application area. You will see, it will say probably it'll either say 2019 ARS or it will just say ARS application. The funding was in 2019, and that's how they identify it in CAMS. Once you open up the application, we're not looking, I know for those of you who do CDBG, you've got to do the surveys and the environmental and all that. None of that is on our application. So the things that you're looking for, we're basically looking for your experience and what you're looking to get out of ARS. And those are pretty much what the 8 questions are. So things like, where would you like, where, based on your locality or your nonprofit, where are you chartered to work? Or are you someone like Habitat State that can work anywhere? And let us know that. Some folks are just regional. Hey, we can work only in the Hampton Roads area. Or, oh, we can work in these 2 counties together because we have a regional MOU. Just let us know where you want to work. Then we're going to ask about your experience. And we want to know that because when we go to train, we do individually trainings for each and every grantee that comes on board. We have it, it's called a boot camp. And what we don't want to do is, if you all are experts at, let's say you're experts at the renovation piece, but you've never really acquired a property and you've never sold a property because they're all city-owned properties and you rent everything you have. We certainly don't want to spend our time training you on renovation when you already know how to do that. We would want to spend our time on how to find acquisitions, how to negotiate the best deal you can. And we would spend our time on marketing to LMI home buyers, how to use social media to do that, and possibly not do that with a realtor because that would eat into your net profits. So that's where, it's kind of modular training on how we would set that up. So again, when you apply and you set up the application, it's going to ask you, tell us about properties that you've acquired, renovated, and sold. And just go through and explain it. And if you don't have experience in that area, that's not a ding. These are not scored by points. This is an open application. We're simply looking for, where do we need to give you technical assistance and training so that you all will create a successful program? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And going through this, if you don't have experience in any of it, let's say maybe you've only done property management, or you're just looking to get into renovation and resale, that's okay too. Then tell us that. Hey, 10 years ago we had a rental management program, but since then we haven't done anything. That just tells Jeff and I where we need to start. And we have groups at all levels of training throughout. And we have some that Jeff and I are getting ready to do boot camps on early in 2023 that we are starting from helping them develop their management team, to creating their program, to hiring a rehab specialist, to bringing in a housing counselor and creating that program. and some who say, hey, we acquire and rehab all day long, but we only do rentals. So we really need that marketing piece. And we are flexible. We will work with you however you need. The issue is, we have these monies, we want to spend these monies, and we want you all to be successful in your program. So to do that, we're going to do individualized training. We don't do blanket training.
Nice.
Okay. Are there any questions or anything else this afternoon?
I do have one question. I wanted to ask, I'm currently working a project in a particular locality that receives CDBG funds. One of the people that we had preliminary information on, they don't qualify because they own 2 homes. One is their primary home, and the other one, which they were trying to get, I guess, renovated or redone. It's pretty much just sitting there, and it's not, doing anything like that. And so we were planning to demo that and then build a brand new home, but because they have 2 homes, they don't qualify. So one of the things we were looking for was trying to get funding to build them a home. Like, we still have within the budget to demo the house, but we were looking for funding to try to just, build something else. Within the, I guess, perimeters of this particular program, would that person be able to have something along those lines to where they could have funding to build them something new?
So with the house that they're currently in, that's their primary home. Is that correct?
Yes, they stay in a trailer park. And so they have a trailer park. And so they kind of got this one as the other home started to deteriorate. And so they said they've been living there for about 3-4 years now, but they pretty much were trying to get a brand new home so then they can get out of the trailer park and move back to a new home. And so that's kind of what they were trying to do. But then because they own 2, it was a conflict because of the CDBG fund. So
of course. And I think there is definitely a way to work with that with ARS. What we would probably have them do is they would need to sell the home in the trailer park when they moved, into the new home. And the monies that ARS spends on the home would have to be repaid. So would they be able to qualify for a mortgage of, up to $40,500? Or if you're, flat out building them a new home, do you have other grant funds where they would only have to cover that money? I couldn't leave that money in the home, I guess is what I'm saying, is this program requires that it be repaid. And I know CDBG sometimes will, do a period of affordability and leave it in the home. I don't have that capability with this program.
yes, ma'am. That's exactly, kind of what I was, like I said, I kind of just said, I'll throw the question out there to kind of see, because I kind of figured I knew the answer, but I was just like, well, I really don't know unless I ask. So let me
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, if they had the capability, like I said, of financing just the $40,500 and carrying a small loan, and you had other programs that could complete the construction, then yes, we could figure out a way to make that an ARS home. But if they don't have the capacity to make the, to qualify for a $40,000 mortgage, I would not be able to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, guys. Well, I was gonna say, Jeff, you want to go ahead and stop recording?